Hello, I'm here with Nullifer, and we are talking about bringing docs to agents because that's a thing now. So I, long before I worked here, I'd admired Stripe documentation. That was like one of the things that attracted me to the company. So we've always had a really good reputation for our docs. Um, how is that now changing when the customers aren't just, users like me, but agents as well?
Yeah. The thing that matters both to agents and humans alike is really good quality on our documentation. And that is something that we are continuing to make sure we hold a high bar on. We need to make sure our docs are fresh with our latest and greatest ships, up to date on content, have things like samples that are reflective of our best practices. And so those things are, continue to be true about how we think about building really great products here at Stripe, and that our documentation needs to support those experiences. There's things that agents don't care about as much, and that's the visual elements that we've cared a lot about in our documentation. And we certainly care about that still, and we will hold a high bar there. But there's things that we need to make easier for agents when they are using our docs. Things like how they can navigate our large repository of different products we support, best practices and recommendations, and find the information that they need to then go serve up to the human user on the other side of it, or the other agent processes that are trying to make a decision for their user. And so we've started to think a lot more about how does an agent actually traverse the docs and find what they need, and what are the ways that we can make that more and more effective for an agent.
Yeah, so what are some of the ways that you found that are there any places like choke points where agents get blocked or might just like overflow its context because there's too much? Have you done anything to make it more accessible to agents?
Yeah, absolutely. We are trying to figure out all the different ways that agents come to our docs. We need to make sure that that experience is really great. So there's a few different places that we've spent a lot of time recently because we're seeing agents come to us in these ways. So first, we definitely see agents just crawling our site, right? They're gathering context for pre-training, or they're coming directly and fetching information as part of a current session with a user. And so we need to make sure that when they come and they hit our website, they can get the context that they need. Like we said, they don't really care about these UI elements that we know our humans really care about. And so what we've done actually is start serving up every page when we can tell that it's an agent coming as metadata. So any Stripe docs page, if you go in and you type .md at the end of it, you can get the optimized version for an agent. And so an agent can read all of the context it needs, get the right information, and do what it needs to do with that. Even within our docs pages for our humans who are coming to docs first, we're making sure that they have the tools to hand off to their agents when they need to. So we've added copy to LLM buttons across all of our surfaces so that you can get that optimized version to hand off directly to your agent, as well as grab things like the skills or plugins from those surfaces as well. Then there's two other ways that we see more programmatic access of agents coming to our docs that we are making sure we're optimizing for as well. And that's through our MCP server and our CLI. We're seeing agents using these tools that are available to them to do a litany of things, including gathering information on the right things that they need to build with Stripe, or how to handle certain processes in Stripe. So we've added both to our MCP and our CLI ways that agents can go and traverse and get the information that they need, and programmatic ways that they can do things like search for a specific API resource or information about a specific type of integration. So we have an MCP tool as well as a CLI plugin now for an agent to be able to gather that context.
Oh, yeah, that sounds very useful. Especially since an agent that can read docs, like say in the middle of a task, is very, very different than an agent that was just trained on some of this data. What does real-time doc access change about what an agent can do as it's helping somebody build a Stripe integration?
Yeah, we move quickly at Stripe and ship new things every single day.
Yeah.
And so at some point, or at most points, the pre-training is out of date, unfortunately. And so, we're doing our best to make sure that at those snapshots when training happens for these models, the right information is there and the quality is high. But something could ship the next week that is better than what that model was trained on, or something may not have been possible even a week ago, and now we have a new product that makes it true. And so that in context, point in time search for an agent to be able to go and gather the newest and latest information is incredibly important as we continue to ship changes. And so we are making sure that it's easy and accessible for an agent to do that, because we might have shipped a new API version or changed, added new APIs, period, for an agent to be able to use. So we find it incredibly important for an agent to have latest context in that way, and being able to make sure that the search tools and the access to our docs are available to an agent is one of our greatest tools in being able to do that, so that the agent isn't just relying on the pre-training that it might have.
Yeah, makes sense. And especially since Stripe does have a very large and complex API surface. So how do you make sure that the agent is finding the right endpoints, also the right version, like all of those details for that specific integration the user could be asking for, or especially in the case when the user might not even know what they're asking for?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things that we can do a little bit more with agents is be a little bit more opinionated in telling an agent, hey, these options exist, but this is actually the one that is most relevant to your user. So we're able to gather context for what the user is trying to do and what they're trying to build. Their agent can pass that forward as they interact with Stripe. And so they can come and they can search for very specific keywords of, my user is trying to build a subscriptions business. Here's how I should do that. And so I think we have the ability to provide that very specific information to agents to say, here's the latest API version, use that, and don't use one of these older versions. Or here is how you implement this specific API and the gotchas that you need to watch out for. So I think we're able to, we're doing so many things like adding in skills to help agents know, like, these are our best practices and how we build integrations of these different shapes, as well as tools like being able to get a recommendation on what kind of integration you should build via our MCP server. So all of these things start to work together to help an agent build the best recommendation and eventually build the best actual integration that just makes that, compresses that build cycle much, much faster than a human trying to go and navigate all of these different pieces themselves.
Right. So yeah, it sounds like as the agent is guiding the human in the integration building, we're guiding the agent and pushing it in the right direction of like exactly what we want the result to be. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Well, yeah. Well, thank you for talking to me, and yeah, looking forward to hearing more where the docs journey goes at Stripe. Thanks.